So I was going to make maybe a complex kind of video, but in many ways I'm in the mood for simplicity at the moment. I think on the spiritual path, we need to get really simple with it as much as possible and not overcomplicate the whole journey, because essentially in many ways it's about a fragrance. If the fragrance calls us, then in a way life takes care of itself and we don't have to work it out with a left brain mentality like we were trained to do in school and in college and throughout our lives, where we sort of apply some methodology to something that ultimately just has no method in it whatsoever. So I was going to do that, and then I realized the essence of sometimes what it's good to talk about, and that is that spiritual realization must be embodied, not just understood on the mental level. And this sounds like a very small, very obvious kind of statement to make, but it ends up being almost the most complex for many people, certainly the contemporary Western seeker, because it opens up such a nest of vipers, a can of worms, the whole of the lived experience, the whole of the emotionality, the nervous system, the pain body, the pain, the body itself, is invited into the inquiry. Because I don't know about you, but I've actually met a lot of people who've got a great understanding of spiritual realization, but it's kind of fallen short in many ways because it hasn't truly entered the inner chambers of the entire body system, whatever that means to you. The nervous system, the subtle energy body, the constricted body, the heart, the very fabric of our being, the embodiment. You see, spiritual realization, in a way, that statement, spiritual realization must be embodied, not just understood, is not really so much about it entering the body. That's a linear understanding of it. Must be embodied means it has to enter the lived life, the lived experience, the day-to-day intimate ways that we go about our lives and all of the interactions we have with everything, from our animals, our creatures, our parents, our going out to the store, our interactions on the phone, our interactions online and social media, how we are in silence, how we are with our food, how we are with our body, how we are with the absolute very fabric of our lives that includes the body. But you see how embodiment is a vast area that if we neglect it, spiritual realization can be, not necessarily, but often, a kind of disembodied, bypassed way of being in the world. Everybody has a different body, emotion, subtle energy body, pain body, a different experience. No two people are alike. Everybody has their individual strain of how they came, their individual path of how they came into being. What's been carried in this life, what's been experienced in this life, what's been carried through the ancestral lineage. What's the wounding, what's the trauma, what's the denial, what's the history that's been passed down generation to generation to generation. And what has been experienced in this life, some people have had it easy in many ways. Some people have had it milder than other people. Some people have experienced great dramatic trauma. Some people have had wounding. Most people have had some kind of insult to the innocence of their being. Some people have been neglected, abandoned. You know, some people have not experienced the family unit. Some people have been abandoned by their father. Many have been abandoned by, you know, even if they're physically present, have been abandoned by their parents. Many have been subjected to narcissistic parent, which seems to be very common, actually, more common than one would think or one would hope, you know. And this has created so many veils, so many levels of wrapped upness for the human being. But what I'm saying is that each and every person has a different story that they're walking around as. Yeah, every single person. And some people, when they get onto the spiritual path and have a realization or an understanding, you know, it doesn't, it's not as much of an issue penetrating or becoming part of the lived experience, because they haven't got such a dense pain body or a dense or such a traumatized or wounded experience. But, you know, damn it, so many have. God, so many have. And people end up on the spiritual journey to try and find some peace with that. Just, you know, find themselves on the spiritual journey to try to, whether they know it or not, to come to terms with it, to make sense of it, and ultimately to let go of what has happened. And therein lies part of the, you know, the difficulty, because there's spiritual realization. And the number of people I hear who say, yeah, I get it, I understand it, I can see it, but still it's not lived, but still it's not in my experience, because I have this extraordinarily reactive system, nervous system, you know, energy system that just, you know, completely destroys or overrides any understanding that I might have in the heat of the moment, generally. You know, but that's the pointer, right? That's the pointer, that bypassing or transcending in that way doesn't really work. The realization has to come into the lived experience. The body has to be included on the spiritual journey. There is no other way. The emotions have to be included on the deepest spiritual journey, the journey of deeper intimacy into openness and kindness and tenderness. There is no other way. There isn't a trick. There isn't a circumventing it. You can't go around it. You can't bypass it. You can't fix it. There's nothing that one can do. There's nothing that we can do apart from have the capacity, the courage, the willingness, the grace, and the persistence to keep on showing up to our experience, to penetrate it with our presence and our willingness, and to look into it with a very kind of resolute, in a way, spiritual inquiry, to see what we've been defined by, and to ask questions about how we've allowed the past experiences to define us over and over and over again. So we've become the wounded person, we've become the angry person, we've become the victim. We've actually assumed the identity of our wounds so often. The wounds have defined who we are and how we go about our lives. And there's the inquiry, 2 levels of the inquiry. One is to really inquire as to whether that's true. Is it true that that's who I am? Is it true that I was defined, I have been defined in my error or in my survival way, in the way of survivalism? I have, navigated my way, strategized my way through my experience, being led by, molded by the wounds and the whole of the conditioning that's led me to become this. But do I need to do that anymore? Because I've seen through something, I've seen through the veil, I've seen that I don't need to be defined by the past anymore. But what does that really mean? Because what that really ultimately means is that then I have to find a way of almost processing, but allowing, not processing to fix, but processing by meeting everything that was, the energy of everything that was, all the turnings away from love, of all the insults, of all the grievances, of all the rages, of all the angers, of all the shocks, of all the reactivity, to somehow, by and by, allow all of those to come up into the bigger bowl of the love that I believe that I truly am. And sometimes that will mean maybe seeking some outside help in a bodywork somatic way, of a rebirthing or primal therapy, or of body parts, letting go of this part, of this part, of this part, of meeting it, of seeing what it has to say. Body work's fantastic for that. Rebirthing, breath work is fantastic for that. With a focus, find out what it is that's still living in the system, in the embodied system, because the nervous system is the past in so many ways. The nervous system is the embodiment of many, many aspects of the past that we couldn't process then, and so we carry them around in a way intelligently, because we carry them around in the hope, in the understanding that we'll process them at some point, but we never do. And so they become, in effect, locked in. The nervous system is the past in so many ways, manifesting in the present as the trigger mechanisms, as the knee-jerk, as the fight or flight, over and above what it's intended for. And so there it is, it kind of comes into our experience. So sometimes we need help with that, to find methods or ways, to release it in a cathartic kind of way. But a lot of the time also we need to, or we have the possibility to, in our deepening wisdom, have the capacity to just meet things for ourselves. Both of these things in tangent, to say, well, I've seen through the illusion of who I became, and I've seen that I just hold on to these things, but they're not actually who I am, and I don't really know who I am, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that, because I don't need to know who I am. I'll find out. I'll find out by resolving, by dissolving, by healing all of this stuff. By and by I will find out. And that inquiry, coupled with the willingness to open up the nervous system, open up the subtle energy body, to see where we're carrying the wound and the hurt and the tightness and the holding on. For some it's down in the base of the body. I mean, we're all the same. Carry these things. Sometimes it's the inability to express anything, because the heart is closed and the voice constricts and the throat goes offline. For many, it's the solar plexus, which is the seat of power and inner authority in so many ways, and the life force has been sat on, suppressed. So then, for many it's the sacral center, the deepest feeling center of us, that felt that it's not allowed to feel, how it is. That's suppressed. All of these aspects of us, the feeling center, the fire center, the authority center, the heart center, the expression center, have all been, suppressed in us in so many ways. But the spiritual realization has to come in by and by. So we start to get, doesn't happen suddenly, usually happens by and by, over a period of time. It could be a day, a year, a month, It took me a long time without even realizing what was going on to get over everything that had happened and to be in effect reborn without being too kind of weird about it. To strip away the false layers and levels of who I thought I was and how damaged I was by my the stuff that happened in my family and everything that I did for years and years and years. It took me a long time to heal, repair, and get inside the energy system of my body to realize that I didn't have to be that anymore. I didn't have to be that one. I didn't have to be the victim, the wounded one, the angry one, the righteous one, the turning away one, the negative one, the escapist one. I didn't have to be that anymore. And that didn't solve the problem, but it did make me realize that, this world in many ways, its existence, although we don't even realize it, is a blank slate, And it gets written on when we get here. The blank slate of our innocence kind of gets written on through our parents and our childhood and our religion and our teachers. And it gets written on the blank slate. Well, he's this, she's this now, and she's a good girl when she shuts up, and she's a bad girl when she misbehaves herself, and she believes in this, and we tell her what to do, and she's unworthy, he's no good, he'll never amount to something. All of these things that are written on the blank slate of us, and they become the slate that we carry around all of our lives. No longer a blank slate. And part of this deepest aspects of the spiritual journey is to return to some kind of blank slateness of us, which sounds like, we'll return to nothingness. But in a way we do, because we return to a silence and we return to a sort of innocence, where the body isn't sort of defined by all these constricting things that have been written into us. So we kind of say, well, that was then. That was for my 40, 50, 60 years. It doesn't matter when it happens. But we kind of wiped some of the slate clean, not by denying it, but by accepting it, but not being defined by it. You see what I mean? It's a very different kind of way of seeing it. It's it brings us into a kind of maturity. And that's where the understanding and the embodiment kind of become one, so that it becomes a deeply lived experience. All of the things that I used to feel in my body, my nervous system, it contributed to my illness that autoimmune illness that I carried around for years and years, was the outplaying in many ways of all of the wounding and hedonism and trauma and, anger that I carried around for years and years and years, and that's not there anymore. Still the body has its, as I get older, still the body has certain tendencies and nuances, but that's the body. It just doesn't hold the stories that it used to hold. It doesn't hold any stories anymore. nervous system is just nervous system now. Immune system is doing its best in this crazy world, you know, to support me in navigating, you know, the three-dimensional reality. But there's nothing extra carried around from the past. And that makes for a kind of cleanness, a clean slate living, meeting what is, meeting what is. No story, no extra story, no burden carried from the past. And that's the essence of what spiritual realization as it comes into the lived, embodied experience really means. So I hope this has spoken to you a little bit. It, you know, it's such a deep subject, a deep and nuanced subject. And if you've got any, you know, comments or you've got any questions, I'll see if I can do my best to kind of give some, I don't know what, you know, articulation to it. Maybe. We'll see. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.